Hey everyone, this is Ben, and I'll be reviewing the newest flagship offering from Flydigi, the Apex 5 controller. Let's unbox this bad boy and see what we get with our purchase. The packaging itself seems pretty premium, as far as packaging goes anyways, with an outside jacket that has some of the marketing information on it, and then the inner box that holds the actual contents. Inside, first thing, is a little blurb where the Flydigi team is patting themselves on the back for how amazing the Apex 5 apparently is. Thank you, Mr. Product Director, for the note. Then we have a small white box that holds some scratch tabs that you can customize yourself and put on the controller, a slip that shows some of the latest Flydigi products, as well as a QR code for the official Flydigi Discord, and a user manual booklet with multiple languages included. We've got a 6-foot long braided USB-A to USB-C cable, the wireless dongle using Neuralink technology, and the 2 detachable back paddles. And last but most important, the actual controller itself. The Apex 5 is advertised as a multi-platform controller that's natively compatible on PC, Nintendo Switch and Switch 2, Android, and iOS. It's got 3 connection options, those being wired, wireless using the dongle that comes with it, and Bluetooth wireless. According to some quick Google searching, it also works on Linux, but I have no first-hand experience, so if there happens to be someone more knowledgeable about this that's watching the video, please write your experiences in the comments. It looks like Flydigi now has official marketing names for what's probably the 2 main selling points of this controller. The first being their thumbsticks, called ForceFlex Alloy Joysticks 2.0. It's supposedly improved from the original ones that are on the Apex 4 models, with higher durability and much improved latency. They're claiming 3 millisecond stick latency on wired and 5 milliseconds on wireless, with wired and dongle wireless polling at 1000 Hz. They also retain the same tension adjustment mechanism as the originals, which is pretty disappointing I think, considering that their lower end models, the Vader 4 Pro, the new Direwolf 4, and the upcoming Vader 5 Pro and Vader 5S, all using much better tension adjustment mechanism in my opinion. Moving on to their second main selling point, their Force Adapt triggers. These fancy triggers attempt to imitate the adaptive triggers of the Sony DualSense controllers, and according to the people that play games that implements them, they do a pretty good job of it. Unlike the DualSense though, the Apex 5 doesn't have native game support, so you have to go into the software app and enable a supported game on the list to have the cool trigger functions active while playing it. They've redesigned their mappable back buttons, now having 2 set back buttons and 2 back paddles that are removable, and they've added, or re-added I should say since the Apex 2 had them as well, 2 extra shoulder buttons beside the triggers. It's got a little LCD screen on the front that you can use to adjust a lot of the controller settings and functions, as well as display images and GIFs, also known as GIFs, for some personal customization. The face buttons are clicky micro switches, and all of the other buttons are tactile switches. The internal battery capacity is 1500 mAh, the same as on the Apex 4. So on initial inspection, it definitely looks and feels like a premium, top-of-the-line product. My last and only premium class controller before this was the Elite Series 2, but I don't have it anymore, so I can't directly compare. But from memory, this Apex 5 feels just as premium, if not even more premium than the Elite 2 did. Everything feels solid and well built. It's got a noticeable weight to it, but it's well balanced, which is good. According to my kitchen scale, it comes in at 332 grams with the paddles attached. Nothing is loose and rattling, all of the button presses feel snappy and responsive, the triggers are smooth with a nice clear plastic finish, and the sticks are even smoother. The backside of the handles have textured rubber grips, and it feels the exact same as the ones on the G7 Pro from GameSir. I personally prefer non-rubber grips, but I don't really mind these ones too much. Ergonomically, the controller feels very comfortable in my hands. They've redesigned the shape slightly from the previous Apex 4 and Vader 4 Pro. The Apex 5 looks and feels slightly smaller, but the grips have become slightly more rounded, and the new shape is almost identical to the Series X controller shape. The bumpers and triggers also have been redesigned and now look and feel like the Xbox controller. I actually really like the older trigger design, which were wider and flatter. And the new ones are a little less comfortable and a little less ergonomic. That's just my preference though, so your experience might be different. The D-pad has also been redesigned, and even though I don't really play games where it's a main input, it feels more satisfying to press, and the diamond shape makes it easier to feel for the diagonal inputs. Flydigi has also added a center pivot to the D-pad, which I know was a big issue for a lot of people when it came to the Apex 4 and Vader 4 D-pad design. They've come up with a new design for the back buttons as well, and it's now 2 back buttons and 2 removable back paddles meant to be pressed with your middle and ring fingers, as opposed to the old button design that was meant to be pressed with only your middle fingers. I know that this is probably an unpopular take, but I actually prefer the old design better, especially because of how I like to grip my controllers. But speaking purely on the ergonomics of the new design, my fingers rest perfectly on the buttons and paddles, so they're positioned well. I'm not convinced about these removable paddles though. They have a little bit of play to them, and it doesn't seem like a sturdy design. But we'll see if after months of use we start to see a lot of complaints about them loosening or breaking. It should also sit closer to the body of the controller in my opinion, and that way when it's fully pressed, it contacts the body and prevents the paddles and the attachment slots from overflexing and potentially weakening or breaking over time. The way it is right now, when I've actuated the paddles, there's still a lot of room to press even further, and when I do, it definitely feels like I'm putting strain on where the paddles attach to the body. The extra shoulder buttons, LM and RM, I'm a big fan of. They're easy enough to reach and have enough actuation resistance so that it's hard to press them on accident when I'm switching from the bumpers to the triggers. This is a problem that I have now and again with the extra shoulder buttons on the G7 Pro. If I was able to improve them though, I would make them just a little bit taller, and also flip them around so that the flat top of the buttons are leaning closer to the triggers instead of away from them like they are now. The middle logo is now the power button, which makes total sense. The start and select buttons are in crappy spots, which I guess is because of the screen. And I'm not a big fan of the transparent faceplate, but it's not that big of a deal and doesn't take away from the overall premiumness of the rest of the controller. Another new design, the phone holder mounts have been changed to make room for the extra shoulder buttons. Flydigi has made a new phone holder for this mount, and the old design holder won't be compatible on the Apex 5. The Apex 5 is very responsive, which is great for competitive gamers like me. Like I said earlier, Flydigi officially advertises 3 millisecond stick latency on wired and 5 milliseconds on 2.4 GHz wireless. And according to official P82 tests on GamePadla.com, they actually weren't lying. Rare W from a company, to be honest. On the latest controller firmware, we see an average of 2.8 millisecond stick and 3 milliseconds button latency wired, and 4.5 milliseconds stick, and 4.9 milliseconds button latency on dongle. Bluetooth results are pretty disappointing, but honestly, I really only play wired, and when I do play the odd game where I want to play wireless, I'd rather connect via the dongle anyways, so Bluetooth doesn't matter to me personally. At an official MSRP of 160 USD though, and for advertising it as a top-of-the-line flagship product, it should have premium quality and performance in everything that it offers. By default, it pulls at 1000Hz on wired and dongle, which is good, and should be the standard for literally every controller at this point, regardless of the price point. I'd like to quickly point out though, that polling rate numbers and results is not the actual latency of a controller. I'll most likely make a video about this very subject in the future, but basically, every controller has to internally process whatever action that you make, pressing a button, moving the joystick, pressing the triggers, etc. Once it's processed that information, then it sends it to your gaming device through the polling rate. That internal processing is the main cause of the overall latency of the controller, and the polling rate is a small aspect of that chain. That's not to say that having a high polling rate is useless or anything. Polling rate is still important, and higher polling rate is still generally better than lower polling rate, but with diminishing returns the higher it is. Anyways, to conclude this little tangent, if you watch any other controller review YouTubers out there, and they're still using polling rate results as the official input latency of whatever controller they're reviewing, please take that information with the Dead Sea's worth of grains of salt, and then go on GamePadlet.com and look for properly tested results using the Prometheus 82 or the GPDL. Let's get to some gameplay. For COD, the Apex 5 is great. I've got no issues playing about as good as with any other controller I have. People might complain that the sticks are still Hall effect, because the rest of the industry has seemingly moved on to TMR and beyond, but the smoothness, the latency, and the adjustable tension are just top notch, and I've had no problems with tracking at any range and with my movement. My only real complaint with this controller is the lack of real micro-switch trigger stops. It does have simulated trigger locks, using the max resistance of the force feedback triggers, but it's not that hard to push through that resistance, especially in hectic situations, when I reflexively squeeze the triggers harder than I normally would. You also miss out on the satisfying tactile feedback from the clickiness of the switches. Not everyone uses trigger locks though, even for FPS games. I haven't played Battlefield 6 very much yet, and I've probably spent just as much time trying to dial in my controller settings to feel good and responsive as I have actually playing in matches, but once I was able to play some matches, I've got no problems with this controller. Again, outside of the fake trigger stops, of course.
Holy crap! Why is... I sniped the dude 3 times and he didn't die, after I'd already... Third person. Got it.
Halo Infinite is where I felt probably the most improvement in my game, because I was comparing the Apex 5 with my Vader 4 Pro. The sticks felt a lot more responsive and accurate, especially when I applied Monoru's custom linear curve. Check out his channel if you don't know him. He's a Japanese controller reviewer who uses a device that can accurately measure the linearity of the thumbsticks, and then modify the curve to make it more linear if there's software that can customize it. Performance is great, and Flydigi has done a good job of getting the most out of their custom-made Hall effect modules. The linearity can still be better, but being able to adjust it in the software is at least a plus.
Double kill. Gain the lead. Double kill. Shot caller. Gain the lead. Shot caller. Shot caller.
I wouldn't quite recommend it if you're a competitive gamer only, looking for a new controller, but it's not because of its performance, and I'll get into that later in this video. The Apex 5 uses Flydigi's new SpaceStation 4.0 software, separate from their SpaceStation 3.0 that all of their previous generation controllers use. This is the opening screen, and if you click on the gear icon bottom left, you'll see some general settings for the software. Connect your controller and click on it to get to the meat and potatoes. The left bar shows that you can make 4 different profiles, and either switch between the profiles here, or you can do it on the controller itself by pressing the function button and one of A, B, X, or Y. There's the adaptive trigger section, where you can toggle it on or off for all of the games that are supported. The screen section, where you can choose a picture or GIF to display on the controller screen or upload your own. You can also turn it off if you don't want it. There's another settings page, which has the same SpaceStation settings from the earlier page, but now also has controller-specific settings. These joystick global settings were introduced with the Vader 4 Pro, and has been added with the Apex 5. Having this much control over the response of the sticks should be mandatory for all controllers. From here, you can also update the firmware for the various parts of the controller. Back to the previous page, you land on what's called the Common tab. I don't know why it's called that, but here you can change the lighting and the grip vibrations to your preferences. The next tab is the Buttons tab that tells you how to modify the mappings of your controller. When you click on any of the inputs you want to modify, you'll get the option to map it, and you'll also get the turbo and macro options available to personalize. Next tab is for the joysticks. You have your circularity algorithm, your sensitivity curve, where you can choose from a couple of presets or customize your own curve, and then the joystick active range, where you can adjust the inner and outer dead zones, as well as the offset or anti-dead zones. Next tab is for gyro settings, and the final tab is for the triggers. Here you can choose from some different trigger mode presets to make games more immersive that don't have native adaptive trigger support. Last thing up here is this test section, and if you click on Advanced Test, you'll get this page. From here, it's basically the gamepad tester, and you can check to make sure all of your inputs are working correctly, check your stick's polling rate, circularity, and center offset. Pretty streamlined software. It's easy to use and easy to navigate, and as far as I can think of in the moment, it's got all of the customization options I need and want. I haven't had any issues with SpaceStation so far, and I haven't encountered any major or minor bugs yet. So what are my overall thoughts on the Apex 5? Does it live up to the hype? Who exactly is it for? And is it worth the $160 price? In my opinion, the Apex 5 is the best general controller out on the market right now. And by general, I mean a controller that can pretty much do it all and will work well with whatever type of game you want to play. It's not perfect with all game genres, but it's at the very least good with most of them. With it being a premium flagship product and the popularity of Flydigi, it had quite a bit of hype and expectations, and when it finally officially released, I'd say that it was met with a pretty meh reception. I think it had to do with two main reasons. First, it's still using Hall Effect stick modules. When the Apex 4 released, Hall Effect was still all the rage, and Flydigi developing and producing their own modules that were incredibly smooth with tension adjustment gave it significant hype and positive reception. The new TMR sensors hitting the market quickly made that hype a thing of the past though, and I don't think that many people, Flydigi included, really expected TMR to develop so rapidly and pretty much take over the market in less than a calendar year. Not only that, but soon after the initial release hype of the Apex 4, it was discovered that the modules were physically flawed, and many people were reporting cracked and broken modules after just barely owning them. They claimed to have fixed the physical failures of these modules with the new 2.0, and to be fair, I think I've only seen one report of a broken stick module, but people aren't quick to forgive big time issues like that. Second, visually, at least from the front, the Apex 5 barely looks any different from the Apex 4, and one of the major things that people have been suggesting be changed since the release of the 4, the tension adjustment mechanism, is still the same. It's real annoying that in order to change the tension of the sticks, you have to remove the D-pad cap, which is on pretty tight, remove the faceplate, and use the small and inconvenient tool to turn the screw that loosens or tightens the tension. That's too many steps in my opinion, and pretty much everyone expected it to change for the Apex 5, especially because not only did they do it better with the Wukong collaboration model of the Apex 4, having the tension screws be accessible without removing anything, but they developed a way better system on the Vader 4 Pro. It really made no sense and makes the Apex 5 seem more like an Apex 4.5 than a whole new generation. It's pretty unfortunate I think, because outside of those two things, the Apex 5 actually does have a few really good improvements over the 4. The stick latency has been drastically reduced, and it's now one of the fastest in the market. They redesigned the back buttons and it seems to appeal to more people than the old layout, even though I personally prefer the old layout. They added 2 more extra buttons that people have been asking for, and they're well positioned, and they added a center pivot to the D-pad, which a lot of people criticized the old D-pad for not having. They were so close to hitting the bullseye. Having said all of that though, it's still a great controller within its own context, and compared to its competition. If you're a gamer who likes playing all sorts of games from all sorts of different genres, and you're looking for just one controller to do it all, I'd say that this controller fits the bill exactly, and I recommend the Apex 5 to you even at $160. Look at every controller that costs more than the Apex 5, and I can almost guarantee you that none of them have the full feature set that the Apex 5 has, so in that context, I think it's a fair price. There's only one company that I know of with a controller that directly competes with the Apex 5 in features and price, but they aren't near as popular here in North America, and don't seem to be trying too hard to break into the Western market. If you do plan to get the Apex 5 though, make sure you buy it from a reputable vendor, like Amazon, where warranties are honored and the returns are easy. Quality control has always been an issue with the Chinese third party, and continues to be something to be careful about. I haven't had any problems with my model so far, but there have been reports of some physical issues with their Apex 5, mainly the D-pad being squeaky and getting soft, whatever that means, and the sticks making grinding sounds. Now, if you're more like me though, and you really only play competitive shooting games, I can't recommend the Apex 5. Don't get me wrong, it's still really good when it comes to using it for those games, but our needs are a lot simpler, and it's missing one major feature that a lot of us FPS merchants can't go without anymore, and that's the micro-switch trigger locks. The FPS controller market is so saturated with so many good options now and at much better prices, that the Apex 5 can't compete in that specific space. And if you still want a Flydigi controller as a mainly FPS gamer like me, because you're a fan of the brand, or just something about the controller is hit right, wait for the Vader 5 Pro. It's literally just around the corner. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I hope that this video was helpful in your decision making on whether or not the Flydigi Apex 5 fits your needs and wants, and if it's worth your money. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe and stay tuned. Thanks again, and until next time.